Welcome to Science Action, Episode 1, a channel where I bring my research as it happens to the public. So before I explain the first experiment in this first episode, I wanted to show you guys my way to work as I'm biking here. And the reason being is because this is where I get lots of my ideas for my experiments. So in this case, for example, you see linden trees as the ones on the right being green and the ones on the left here which have completely lost their leaves, and yet others which are yellow. And there's considerable variation in terms of the timing of leaf fall in this row of trees growing in this location. And even though they are of very similar age and growing close to each other, experiencing similar temperatures, yet we see this variation. So again, as you see this tree on the right here growing as though it was summer with most of its leaves still green, and compared to lots of other linden trees which have already lost their leaves. So this causes very big differences in the growing season in this species. So when one is trying to estimate the changes in the growing season in a particular tree species, one has to keep in mind the natural variation which exists among the individual trees within a species. And as you also see here in this row of linden trees in the city center, again planted at a very similar time and experiencing very similar conditions and temperatures, again we see this variation. Now what I've noticed is, as you see here, is that trees which lose their leaves first in one year, they tend to do this in subsequent years as well. So in this photo going from the left, linden trees number 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8. As you see, they've lost their leaves before the others in this row of linden trees. And in the following year, I've noticed that the pattern repeated itself. So that was 2019. And in the year of 2020, basically a photo which I have taken a couple of days before this video, again you see here the same pattern repeats itself. So trees from the left side of the photo, number 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8, they're standing here without leaves, whereas other trees in the same row have at least some leaves still on them. Now I've also noticed this pattern where I live. Here seen in this photo taken in 2018, the oak on the right has experienced leaf coloration before, much before actually, the oak on the left side of the figure. And on the next photo, which I took again a couple of days before this video, again the oak on the right is the same one from the previous picture, and it lost its leaves first. So the sequence has repeated itself. The other thing that I've noticed is that across species, trees tend to start decoloration or losing of the green pigment from the tops of trees. So as you see in this maple here, the top portion of the tree is already yellow, whereas the bottom one is still green. So that's another thing to keep in mind when researching tree phenology. And what I'm interested in is when buds open, as these buds that you see here on this linden tree. So when do they open in the spring? Because that plays a big role in the growing season that a tree has and how much growth it can accumulate during the growing season. Now, it's important to note that these buds are already formed in late summer and the beginning of fall. So even in different species like this birch here that still has green leaves on it, the buds are already there and ready to open once winter has taken place and warm temperatures return in the spring. So this is my experiment. I have trees in different greenhouse compartments. The first one that you see here has its windows open, so the temperature inside is very close, almost identical to the temperature outside. So this is termed control. And you see, even though that most of these trees should lose their leaves as outside, again we have this large variation. In this case, in these beech trees, some of them still being completely green and others already completely brown, even though the temperatures are completely the same. So that's why we need to use many trees in these experiments to get an idea of how a particular treatment is impacting them. So now in this second compartment, as you see here, definitely you've noticed that generally most of the trees are much greener. So that's because they've been warmed by a temperature of about 4 to 5 degrees for the past 1.5 months. And basically I will see how that impacts them in the following spring. So before that, I quantify the impact that this warming has had on them. So exactly by how much did they delay coloring the leaves and dropping them. And I do them by measuring their greenness with the device that you see here, because doing this just with your eyes is obviously biased, and this device shines light through leaves and shows quantifies how green they are. So here you see, for example, a value of 27, and a green leaf, for example, as I measure here, has a value of 38. And now I'm going to measure a yellow leaf, and you'll see that the value will be much smaller. So in this case it's 8.7. Okay, so what you would see with your eyes, but just more accurate and unbiased measurements. That's what this device gives us. And you have to just keep in mind, for example, that with any device they're not perfect. So if any leaves are completely brown or almost black, then the device can give really high measurements or not work at all or give an error. So you basically have to stop measuring them before they completely turn brown. So when the values get close to 0, that's when you know that you have to stop the measurement. So here are the birch and beech trees which I had warmed in the fall, and they will now overwinter in this location. And basically I will wait for spring to see what effect this fall warming, or which had extended the growing season of most of the warmed trees, what impact it will have on the start of their growth in the spring. So to see if there's this sort of a domino effect. And what do you guys think? Do you think that the warm trees will start growing earlier in the spring or later? You'll have to stay tuned to find out.